Hey everybody, the Spud Lord here. Mainstream media is a term that frequently gets thrown around in discussions of political topics. When this term is used, it is often not in a flattering manner. It is usually accompanied by phrases such as fake news and accusations of media bias. With the rise of conservative populism led by President Donald Trump, has come repeated accusations of the mainstream media. CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and more, exhibiting a liberal or left-leaning bias. A similar sentiment can be found in certain segments of the left wing, who accuse the media, particularly Fox News, of having a conservative bias. With all of this anti-mainstream media sentiment, it would appear something is fundamentally wrong in American politics. The first question that must be asked when evaluating any problem is, well, is there even a problem to begin with? After all, the most vocal group in any discussion is not always the majority. So let's talk statistics. Yay! New research would indicate there is a problem. Only 15% of Republicans and 27% of Democrats say that they, quote, trust the information they get from national news organizations, end quote. Additionally, a majority of Americans on all political sides believe that news organizations exhibit a political bias when presenting the news. This is not a new phenomenon. Data indicates this trend started as early as the 2000s. A noticeable trend is the massive partisan split in these beliefs, but even ignoring this, distrust in the media is still quite popular among both major political parties and independents alike. But why should we even care about this issue? Sure, journalists may not like the decline in ratings. How could this happen to me? But how does this impact politics on a larger scale? Well, when they're not being hated by the public, the news media generally plays a strong role in moderating the public's opinions. Analysis of voting trends in the US shows that people who trust the media are less likely to vote strictly along partisan lines. When the media loses the public's trust, people turn to the next best thing for their information, which ends up being partisan news sources. This creates echo chambers and stubborn voters. People refuse to accept information that doesn't conform to their worldview, which, for hopefully obvious reasons, is unhealthy in any political climate. The first step to solving the conflict between media and public opinion is to identify why people distrust the media. Arthur Millick, writing for conservative outlet The Daily Signal, helps to explain the conservative side of the issue by citing CNN news anchor Chris Cuomo.
It's a
chance
problem
to run against her.
because she's doing what they call in politics freezing pockets. Because the donors are giving her money thinking she's going to run. That means they're not going to have available money for other candidates if she doesn't. And I don't think she's going to give it to them.
She's on her way to deciding.
We'll see.
About deciding.
We couldn't help her any more than we have.
I know.
You know what I mean? She's got just a free ride so far from the media. We're the biggest ones promoting her campaign, so better.
This appears to be a recognition by CNN of the left-leaning bias that they are frequently accused of and criticized for. Millick explains this problem by noting that, in a free society, quote, the press would serve to promote the discovery and dissemination of truth by defending republicanism against various kinds of dogmatism, end quote. Millick further suggests that the press is not seeking to serve republicanism, instead abusing its power to control the sphere of public opinion. But is Millick right to distrust the press, or is this just baseless fear-mongering? One example of fake news that Millick cites is Cheryl Gay Stolberg's articles for the New York Times on Governor Terry McAuliffe of Virginia pardoning 60,000 felons just before the 2016 presidential election. Millick accuses the New York Times of having, quote, preempted any opposition as racist, end quote. However, Stolberg's reporting seems innocuous and objective enough. All of the information contained within could be justified as being relevant to the scenario and relevant to the public's understanding of the issue. And the implication that the opposition is racist seems little more than Millick's own expectations. At most, one might be able to accuse their articles of downplaying the opposition arguments to Governor McAuliffe's actions, but even this is dubious. This is not to say that Millick has no point, however. His other example is a CNN documentary on Russian President Vladimir Putin, which says this.
It's important to remember how much he despised Hillary Clinton.
It went beyond ideology. It was personal. Vladimir Putin was not a fan of Hillary Clinton.
Of course, Putin wanted Hillary Clinton to lose. He hated Hillary Clinton.
They basically accuse Putin of having a personal, not political, but personal hatred of Hillary Clinton. But the documentary itself presents little evidence to suggest that Putin's vendetta against Clinton is anything more than political. So in this case, Milik does have a point.
But Spud Lord, why are you only criticizing the left for being biased? You're basically parroting Orange Man. Orange Man back.
Hold your horses, gentlemen. We'll get to criticizing some right-wing institutions because, of course, I am the ultimate centrist.
Perfectly balanced, this whole thing should be.
Oh my god, guys. Thanos is the ultimate centrist. In recent years, the Sinclair Broadcast Group, a conservative news organization, has obtained a large number of local television news stations. Unusually for a large-scale media parent company, Sinclair frequently interferes with and moderates what the local stations broadcast, and sometimes even forces stations to run factually dubious segments. Once, Sinclair instructed their stations to run a scripted sequence that went a little something like this.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
Fair and balanced, everyone. Aside from being quite ironic, Sinclair's actions represent a danger to the truth and a perversion of the media's role in society. But why would a news organization even produce false or biased information? To answer this question, let's have a quick history lesson, because I need to pad for runtime. Around a century ago, the media industry was so much simpler. There was no internet or social media. It was a time where people read newspapers and dinosaurs still roamed the earth. In this time, long-distance communication was primitive. Newspapers were localized to a single town or city, and the high expenses of operating one meant that towns only ever had around a couple publishers. Each publisher usually had some sort of bias to appeal to a certain constituency, but also wanted to win over the moderates and centrists, which would prevent them from straying too far from the center. A newspaper that published an overly biased or inaccurate article would usually get called out by competing papers. This delicate balance would not last. A great meteor descended upon the earth, killing off the dinosaurs. Charles Darwin himself stepped off that meteor, gifted us the internet, and gave us this important piece of advice. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. Media companies would quickly realize the power of the internet for publishing news. No longer were publications limited to a single town or city. They could now reach millions of people across the country in an instant. The internet also made it cheaper to publish. Blogs run by individuals had the same capacity to reach a wide audience as a major publisher, and advertising services allowed anyone to make a living just by getting people to view their content. Yet, as competition flourished, so did partisanship. Study after study found that trust in the media was dropping at record high rates. News outlets could now reach more people whose biases matched theirs, and people could more easily find news that matched their own opinion. Rather than trying to appeal to moderates, news outlets doubled down on their biases to lock in their current viewership. Another factor that contributes to the current state of the media is something that perhaps nobody could have seen coming: information overload. With the advent of the internet, people's access to information exploded. While this allowed for significantly easier distribution of information and research, it also meant it was easier to disseminate false information. One might think that false information would nearly instantaneously be corrected by correct information, but when there's so much information out there, it's easy to ignore information that does not conform to one's worldview, whether intentionally or by sheer coincidence of never bumping into it. This information overload ironically makes finding the truth surrounding controversial topics harder than before. This is where the media should be stepping up. One may think that in the era of social media, where individuals can reach just as many people as a massive corporation, that the news media is obsolete. In fact, the importance of a functioning news media is just as relevant today as it was a century ago. The only thing that has changed is the exact specifications of the media's role. Rather than being the exclusive source of information for the public, the news media should be the filters of information, reporting on the facts that are relevant to the issues that matter to everyday Americans. The news media should be a lighthouse in a sea of confusing and sometimes conflicting information, giving the public a relatively neutral source of news that they can trust to be accurate, allowing them to form their opinions and come to more informed conclusions without being told what to believe. The increased polarization of modern politics, then, is a problem born of the breakdown in the media industry. Outlets reacting to the advent of the internet tried to solve the problem of greater competition by doubling down on their biases to earn and keep a small loyal base. However, this led to increased distrust of mainstream news sources overall, and in the ensuing mass panic, people looked to find objective news reporting in alternative sources, and found only partisan outlets that reaffirmed their own biases because nobody was doing objective reporting anymore. The public fear of the news media is, ironically, reinforced by the media themselves. As in the case with Sinclair above, the media tried to turn the situation in their favor by jumping on the bandwagon, telling their audiences that yes, media outlets were biased, all of them, except for the one they were already watching. Thus, a vicious, self-sustaining loop of media hatred and biased reporting was born, and is being continually perpetuated to this day. For better or for worse, only the media industry has the power to fix this problem. The most obvious solution is for the media to do more unbiased reporting, hire persons of varying perspectives, do more on-the-ground reporting, and connect more with consumers, identify the issues that audiences care about, and present only the facts relevant to those issues. However, this is only part of the solution. People will not return to trusting the media immediately. In fact, the first outlets to do this will likely start losing consumers before they gain any. The media's trustworthiness is only part of the problem. The other part is the public's perception. To regain the trust of the public, perhaps the American media can take a lesson from the German media. For decades, Germans had felt a disconnect between ordinary German people and the German media. This all came to a head in 2015, when Germany was rocked by the immigration crisis. The German media tried to downplay the issue. When they weren't outright ignoring it, outlets tried to explain why Germans should be more accepting of the massive influx of immigrants. This was not an opinion shared by many members of the German public, who accused the media of elitism. This gave rise to the far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD party, of which one of their primary platforms was a loathing for the German press. So how did the German media respond? Rather than doubling down on partisan reporting, the media took the concerns of the people seriously. Outlets created public social media pages where they encouraged their reporters and journalists to interact with and answer the questions of the public. Outlets became more transparent, including admitting when they made mistakes rather than trying to hide or downplay them. As Isabel Hulsen of Der Spiegel noted a year ago, quote, "Our urge to moralize has become smaller, and humility has increased." End quote. And it seems to be working, as trust in the German media is soaring. Things aren't perfect yet, there's still ways the German media could improve, but at least they're doing better than the American media. Is there a chance that something similar to the German media's revival will take place in America? In the current political climate, it seems unlikely. The press not only has to be more trustworthy, but they have to convince the public that they are trustworthy. If the press only does the former and not the latter, it is likely they will see their audience shrink into nothingness, as their readers interpret the shift in reporting style as shifting towards the opposite end of the political spectrum, and their opponents continue to slander them as untrustworthy. If the press gains the public's trust but fails to actually behave in a trustworthy manner, the public will remain uninformed and politically divided, and the public discourse will be no better off. It is possible for the American media to make a revival. The German media showed that. Let's hope the American media is up to the challenge. But hey, that's just a theory. Hello to my professor and the two other random internet people watching. This is a project I made for my college English course. We got to write about a topic we were interested in, and I chose American distrust in the media. Then we got the opportunity to transform it into another medium, and I chose video because I wanted to try my hand at making a decently edited video. If you want to read the original paper, check the description. I hopefully remember to put a link to it there. There's not much extra to see. The biggest difference is the lack of jokes and the sources cited. Also, I removed a factual inaccuracy from the video that I falsely stated in the paper. In the paper, I stated that the German AfD party is on the decline. This isn't actually true. They're still growing in membership, but primarily for reasons unrelated to my topic. Fun fact, this is the first video I've edited using software that was not Windows Movie Maker, so it's a new experience, and I'm liking the larger variety of tools at my disposal. At the time of recording this, I haven't actually done any editing for the video, so here's hoping it all goes well. Yay!